You know, in a time when inflation is rising faster than ever, I've got to ask what inflation is, what taxes are. Two things which sound like obvious questions, right? We all know what they are and what the supposed functions of them are, but what do they actually mean? Because when we think about things like inflation specifically, it's not beneficial to us, but it is beneficial to some. So let's have a think about who that is beneficial to, how that impacts us, and why we should be aware of it. I do suppose in this video I'm just going to be stating facts, as there's not really much that we can do about it, and I'm also going to be sharing my opinion based on facts, right? But I want to have a think about what inflation actually is, and why it's a terrible thing for us all. Of course, there are some very clear-cut reasons as to why inflation's bad. It takes away our money, it gives us less spending power, and it means that our currency is worth less. But when we think about why it's bad, we also need to think about factors that influence it. I think to understand this, we need to first think about what we're talking about, right? What is inflation and how is it calculated? Well, that's quite simple. It's basically just how much items go up in a set period of time. So if we wanted to calculate how much, I don't know, inflation's changed in the last month, let's say, how much have the items gone up or down compared to the previous time period. So let's say it cost £1 last month, now it costs £2, for example. That's a 100% inflation, right? It's pretty obvious, so I don't want to like dumb it down to a ridiculous point. You guys will know this, but let's have a think about that. If anything, in this video I want to focus more on the concept of inflation, because that's something that's kind of been, well, it has been normalized in our society. But as we just discussed, and I'm going to be showing a lot of the scenery as we go around, inflation is a product of, well, it's a product of prices being put up. And of course, prices being put up, that's because of a number of things. Perhaps it's because a company's cost of production's gone up itself. Perhaps it's because they want to make more profit. A lot of the time, it's number two. Now, I'm not necessarily judging, but most people are so, well, uneducated about money, now they don't know that inflation wouldn't be something that just naturally occurs if prices never went up, or if costs never went up. Perhaps there is an element of inflation that is bound to happen anyway. And for me to walk around saying inflation is just companies being greedy may be too much of a short approach for such a multifaceted and large issue. It depends on a lot of things, right? Trade with different countries and stuff like that. But no matter what the prices, or rather the factors influencing that price rise are, I think we can agree that inflation is due to prices overall going up. Now let's think about how that ties into your average person not knowing very much about how the system works, because a consequence of that is, and it's a very fortunate thing for those in control, right? When prices go up, your average person questions it much less, because, you know, it's inflation, it's bound to happen. But in a lot of these markets, it's inflation because companies know that they can. Businesses know that they can, and industries know that they can put the prices up, and you can't, or perhaps even won't, do anything about it. That's the thing I think we forget. Your average person knows so little about the subject, they can just say, well, prices have gone up, and simply, that's just how things are. Now, obviously I understand that certain prices are going to rise over time, but to what extent we've got to, I think about quite a bit more. We don't question it to, I think, the level that maybe we should. If you guys don't know, I run my own online resale business, and my costs have gone up quite a bit in the past 12 months. The items that I buy have gone up for whatever reason. Perhaps it's because of, you know, laws in different countries, increases to minimum wage and stuff like that. But they have gone up, right? I'm not going to lie. So therefore, I'm not going to make no profit or less profit. You put your prices up a little bit. But we're talking, if you're being ethical, or as ethical as possible, maybe an increase of 10 to 30% per item. And you look at certain industries, and actually the economy as a whole, to see an economy broadly go up, what, 7% plus in, this is inflation figures, in a year, is a bit weird. And perhaps it's time to start asking, what's happening? Now, like I say, there's not really much that I think, can do about this, because it's very hard to hold these people to account when you think about it, when we're being told, hey, inflation, that's normal, that's bound to happen, and then perhaps it is to an extent, but not to the extent that we're seeing both at the minute and in recent years. I mean, look, since, what, perhaps maybe the 90s, how much your average house price has risen by, we're talking, you know, in the UK at least, well over 300% maybe more. In fact, probably more. And because it's inflation, we're told, well, don't worry about it. That's something that affects us all. And for us normal people, it does. But there's a certain, well, I suppose, there's a certain market of people who it doesn't affect. Well, it does affect them, but it affects them in a completely different way. Let's talk about, for example, asset inflation. We'll say things like houses, right? There's a certain part of the population that this benefits. And who is that naturally going to be? It's going to be the people who own the properties. You know, if the prices have changed 200-300%, it hurts the likes of me, perhaps the likes of you, the people who are too young, or maybe, let's face it, too poor to own their own property. But for those that do, the return is that 200 to 300%. They're getting richer and richer, and this helps to divide the gap of wealth, but it's marketed geniusly as something that's normal. You know, it's actually a pretty slick move, and therefore it's one that won't be exposed, or it's one that's been done in a way that's so slick most people don't even realise both the repercussions of it, how it's happening, and what it means. We all just sit there and say, well, the price rises that we've seen in certain markets are something that's expected and normal. But to the level that we're seeing now, no, it's not. As I said, I run my own businesses. If you want to learn how you can too, the link is in the description. But in my business, like I say, I might have put the price up a little bit to account for my costs. When items go up 500% plus, that's not really accounting for your costs, is it? Not really. And I understand, it's a nice M5, that there are certain markets where people still don't make money, even after the recent rises. Whether that's due to rises in insurance prices for that market, or other factors that basically are outside of the individual's control. But then again, that means that they put the prices up because their prices have gone up. So it boils down to the same problem. So I think that the consequence of it is it creates a big divide. The people who once could have afforded your average stuff, so we'll say your middle class types, can afford less and less, which is because their prices have gone up. So your typical, back in the day, middle class might have been a house owner, a homeowner, might have even been a landlord to someone else. That's what you call being ambitious. But yet again, perhaps insurance premiums, perhaps the cost of maintaining, or even straight up outright buying 2 homes is so extortionate, that dream goes away. Who takes over? Because it doesn't go to no one, right? And it definitely doesn't go to the poor. It goes to the rich. They get to own more and more property. As, you know, in certain markets, your average families, your average people, your people who work hard, your average people who work hard, well, they can't afford it anymore. You know, if you ask me, it's a really disgusting little scheme wrapped up as something that needs to happen. And like I say, there are factors outside of everyone's control. But in a lot of these markets, right, it's like it's being controlled by, well, the elites more and more, because that percentage of that market that the younger people perhaps would have, well, not the younger people, but the more common people, the likes of you and me, would have once owned, is now impossible. They can't afford it. They're priced out, which again puts more power in the hands of the few. Normally, whilst people probably still wouldn't have drawn, well, any sort of a fuss to it, maybe, you know, they probably wouldn't have had anything to say really, they would have at least known. And it seems like now they're not even aware. They don't even have a clue of it because of how it's wrapped up. Man, this is what I love about Manchester's. 2 of those Bentleys in a row and 2 M3s that I've seen in the last 2 minutes. So much money going on around here. But no, my point is this. When the average person has choice, when the average person has the ability to own things, they have more power. It shouldn't be everyone's dream to own a house. It shouldn't necessarily be everyone's dream to own a car. But in a country like the UK, it should be an ability that everyone has, right? But it's not. Because for a lot of people, for a very, very large amount of people, it's simply too expensive. They can't do it anymore. And that makes you think, in my opinion. It really does. Because, again, a lot of it is prices rising rapidly in every market. It's forcing people to make worse financial decisions, to avoid buying things that they once could have. And I know there's going to be a lot of people, there always is, and I understand it because I agree, in the comments saying, well, they're privileges, we don't get that in this place or that place. You're right. Like Manchester City, where we are right now, is one of the largest cities in the whole of the UK, and actually I think it is the second richest, and it is apparent. But my point is, whilst we have these as privileges, and whilst they always have been privileges and perhaps, well, not rights, let's have a think about why they're disappearing. Because we've not worked for the last, I'm not talking about us individually, but people like us, right? The average person doesn't work and hasn't worked in the past to have nothing. And I've said this before, it does seem like unless you're incredibly rich and the bar to entry is becoming increasingly high, your chances of being able to have a life that somebody once could have is decreasing, because, well, prices are rising so fast. And yet again, inflation, it's normal. Is it? Is it normal? Why is it happening? I am not an economist, and a lot of this video is based on opinion. Like I said, I do have a element of knowledge, but I am not someone in the know of that industry. But my point is this: even if this video, which is opinion based, is fully wrong, right? Let's at least take a minute to think about it. Think about what it is, what it means, how it affects us. I'm not saying necessarily that there's much we can do to change today's economy, today's place, because a lot of the systems are so both entrenched, I think, in our society and also in people's minds. It's hard for them to understand different concepts, but can we at least question it, right? Can we at least think about whether it's good for us, or what it means, or if it's natural? Yes, I know that we're very privileged, and yes, I know that in a lot of ways, even in the past 100 years, living conditions have improved. But in my opinion, that's not a reason or a right to let them slip going forwards. This, I suppose, is one of them ones where there's not much I can really say about it, apart from the intention is to maybe just instill some thought, because a lot of people do not seem to think about it at all. Is it normal? Maybe people more educated than myself will let me know in the comments. As I always say, when I do this sort of thing, I'm just sharing my opinion. It doesn't necessarily make it right just because I have a platform, right, YouTube, to do that. Doesn't mean I'm right. But a lot of these inflation figures that we're seeing, they're going up because, well, I can't say for sure, but what I can say, and by the way, this, what I'm about to say, isn't an opinion, it's publicly available information. Look at, pick most companies actually, there's not many that are still afloat that this isn't true for. Look at companies' profit figures in 24, 23, 22. It's like since 2020, a lot of businesses seem to be absolutely cashing it in. So yeah, I understand and I appreciate that even for a lot of big business, the cost has gone up. But what we're seeing is in the markets, a lot of the markets, by the way, your small to mid competitors are either going bust, going bankrupt, or getting bought out by the larger companies. And well, your larger companies, that once the competition's gone and you got 2, 3, 4, 5 companies in the market that control, I don't know, the majority of the market share, you're not going to see companies working in the best interests of people, are you? Not really. And especially at the minute, I think this has been reflected in a lot of the prices, because quality of a lot of products seems to be going down, you know that only staff members whose pay is mirroring this massive quote-unquote inflation trend, or matching this inflation trend, or anywhere near, is the CEOs and the board of directors. Where is all the money going, right? Where's the cost coming from for an item to increase 200, 500, 1,000%? I can't figure it out. Maybe there's something that I've missed. Maybe I'm just being stupid again. And I don't know if I'm right or wrong, right? I'm not genuinely going to say, oh, I'm right about this when I make opinion-based content. No such thing can ever exist, right? A right or a wrong can't exist. But what can exist is a truth somewhere. And whether it's nearer to my side of what I think's going on, or the opposite side, I'm not sure. But what I do think either way is we should give it a question. And again, when you look at those profit figures, I think it makes a compelling argument for what I'm talking about here. Anyway, that's all. It's probably been quite a long one as I've walked around the city of Manchester showing you some of the local sites. Let's see if we can cross over. Yep. Well, that's it for now, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.